Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Smart Home Collective. Today I am delighted to be joined by two guests. On my virtual left I have Jeff from SlackerLabs, and on my right I have Mark from Mark What Tech. Gentlemen, how are we both doing?
Good, yeah, good.
Yep, doing good.
Good. So Jeff, you've been established for a good bit, just over a year now?
It's probably been a little bit less than a year.
A little less than a year. Pushing out on average, and this is when I was doing my spying on your YouTube channel, roughly about 3,000 views per upload.
Yeah, it's getting pretty close to that, I think. Yeah.
And it's quite steady as well, which is nice.
Yeah, it's been pretty good, except I've taken like the last month off.
Well, I didn't want to mention the fact your channel is called SlackerLabs and you've been a slacker for the past month, but we can touch on that later on.
Yep, absolutely.
Mark, you're relatively new. You've been in been in the market. You're not single.
No.
But you've been on YouTube roughly for about 3 months, but already pushing 2,500 subscribers.
Yeah, I think it's 2.5 now.
Congratulations.
Not that I'm counting. Yeah.
Please about that then.
Relatively, yeah. Like I started at the beginning of January, and then it's kind of just grown like each month. So it's what you want, I guess.
So what? That's a good segue actually. What was really the prompt to kick off your channel, Mark?
So literally right before the whole sort of COVID pandemic, I wanted to actually like get into doing smart home installations, like for companies and offices, that kind of a thing. So like physically go out and actually like, survey buildings and stuff, and then come up with ideas on how to turn those spaces into smart spaces. And that's what I wanted to do. So I started, planning for like the business, and then COVID hit and I was like, oh, great. So kind of put that on hold. And then my next sort of thing was I was just helping out on forums and on pages. Like if I saw someone with an issue and I was like, hey, I know how to do that. Like I was just helping. And then randomly somebody asked me if what I'd written, I could turn it into a video just to help out. So I was like, yeah, I did that. And then, yeah, I kind of like enjoyed doing it. And I thought, I'll just like give YouTube a go. So put a video up, and then, yeah, I just kind of carried on really.
And the rest is history.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of, as we say, you've only been there for 3 months, roughly 2,500 subscribers, 36 videos in 3 months, and you're a family man. How on earth do you do it?
Late nights, very late nights. Late nights and planning, I guess. Yeah, it's challenging. Originally when I started as well, I was like, I'll check out like 3 videos a week. And like I had a whole plan of like, this is the kind of content I want to cover. And then
did you just say 3 a week?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, obviously like very optimistic.
For the listeners, Jeff's sitting there shaking his head in disbelief.
Yeah. And I was like, I could probably do that. And then obviously I got into it, and you spend the night doing your footage, or maybe 2 nights doing footage. Then you've got the whole editing, and I still do it now. I'm like, probably do that edit. I'll do that in like an hour or so. And no, it's hours and hours. And then, it quickly turned into like 1 to maybe 2 a week. Or there has been an occasion like my most sort of recent one. Sometimes I'll be making the video and I'll think like of something that I can do to simplify the video, but it's kind of like a bit off topic and not really to do with the video. So I call it like supporting content, and I just release that as like a separate small video, which I don't really expect to do well, but it's there for people that are interested or want that extra bit of help. So yeah, like I don't want to like cross into your sections, but the most recent one I did, it was to do with like extracting local to your keys, and the actual extraction you get is kind of like a big malformed XML document. So when you're reading it by like just the human eye, you're like, whoa, what is all this? Just like random characters and whatever. So like I just made a little console app just to pull out those bits of information, and then I just made like a short video on how to use that console app for anyone that wanted to use it really. So yeah, that's kind of like supporting content, but not everyone would care about that, not everyone would want to use it. And yeah,
so planning is the key.
Yeah.
Jeff, as we've said already, kind of established for just a year or so. What prompted you, and what was the real, and I'm hoping that the title's got something to do with it.
Yeah, the title does have something to do with it. There was really 2 reasons. One was that I had taken so much from other people that I just wanted to give back to the community. So it was like pay it forward. And I was like, I should start doing some videos on how I do some of this stuff. And then the other reason was, I think late 2019, I decided to get out of just strictly home automation and see if I could push Home Assistant to actually be a smart home. Actually, I wanted to turn Home Assistant into Jarvis from the Marvel movies.
That's how it starts, isn't it?
yeah. So I went down this whole route of like, how much physical interaction could I cut out? And so then I was like, I want to show other people how to do this and go down that, but it ends up being super complicated. So my videos end up being nowhere near as simple as I want them to be. And then they end up, trying to keep them short, and you can go on forever talking about some of that stuff. But yeah, that's kind of the reason I started making videos.
And have you reached that Jarvis momentum achievement yet?
There's definitely parts of this house that feel like Jarvis. There's no interaction, but the house is very sarcastic in anything it reports back to us, and it's randomized, so it's not the same stuff over and over again. So at least in that, it feels somewhat like that. But yeah.
And that's something we may actually try and squeeze it in at some point as we go through the discussion items around definition of a smart home, Jeff, because I know you're using it. I'm curious to know what Mark's views is in terms of what's considered a smart home and what's considered a home with just tech. But we can come on to that. In terms of, listen, before we come into the news items then, Mark, I'll come to you first. Have you ever bought a device purely because it could integrate into Home Assistant? You didn't need it. The house was packed full of stuff, but you still fancied this purely because of that integration.
Yeah, if my wife's listening, then no, I have not. But if she's not, then yeah, I'd probably say there's more than one, because you're just on like these Black Friday deals and stuff, and you see something, you're like, oh, that's quite cool looking. And then you're like, oh, does it? Oh yeah, it is a Home Assistant. Oh, I've bought it now. And it kind of just goes like that. But I think the most recent thing where I kind of just bought it purely because there was Home Assistant like integration was I was after a new robotic vacuum, and I was just looking at the different integrations, and the one that I saw and I liked the look of the integration was the Neato D7. So I got that, and it was wicked. The Home Assistant integration was really good. The way it linked in and everything. Yeah, and then it died. Two of them. So yeah. So,
who robo vacuums died?
Yeah, two of them the same brand. So yeah, it's a touchy subject, that one. But yeah, and they're not the most expensive ones either. I'd probably say they're like mid-range. They're about £500. But like on a Black Friday deal, because I'm not crazy. Yeah, and they both died. So, but yeah, that was one of my purchases where I got it purely because the integration was there. Well, the most recent one I can think of that I bought anyway.
Whereas I made an absolute error with my vacuum. I ended up buying I never know how you pronounce it, Bagotti.
Yeah,
Bagot,
I saw you mention that the other day. Yeah,
the
see, that's the one I had. The BG800.
The BG800, that's the one. And again, stupidly, I should have done my research. I saw the Black Friday sale. I knew my wife didn't want one, but I did, and I saw the price. I thought, she'll swallow that. That's palatable. Bought it, it arrived, and then discovered there was zero integration for Home Assistant. I've been kicking myself ever since.
Yeah.
And unlike you, Mark, I'm hoping this little robot does die, so that I can then buy buy one that can integrate into Home Assistant.
Yeah, I saw you mention that the other day on Twitter. And funny enough, I've actually been playing around with some code, and I've got something working for the.
Ooh.
Yeah, so yeah, watch this space. But yeah, that's the actual robot I upgraded to with the D7, and then obviously two of them died. So I was brush off the dust and got it back out. So it's looking through it away, but yeah. But if you're after just a quick and cheap way of doing it, of getting it working, I don't know if you have already, but just a 2-year integration.
Yeah, so yeah, I can do with 2. I can do the
add the scenes and then use the scenes as scripts.
Yeah, and I think what I've got working right now is purely asking Alexa to start and stop, and that's about it. It doesn't really do much in terms of the actual within Home Assistant graphically or mapping, etc. So
yeah, so from just as a super simple way with the Smart Life app, if you just create some scenes, like, like you can control the suction power, tell it to go home, blah, blah, blah. All of those, add those as scenes in the Smart Life app. And then if you add the two integration into Home Assistant picks those scenes up. So then you can call those scenes from Home Assistant. So you can have a button to say, I think on my one, I call it like deep clean, and that does like the most powerful like suction mode, and then go home or whatever. And obviously you can then combine those with like your presence detection and whatever else, or you can do it with Alexa as well.
Mark, I think you and me are going to be best friends going forward for a little while. Just to get this
up
and running.
Now. Is that integration done?
Just give me your personal number, thanks. Jeff, same question to yourself. Anything you've purchased, not really needed, but you had to have that Home Assistant integration?
I don't know that there was anything that really I went after because it could integrate with Home Assistant. I learned pretty quick to check the integration page before I went and bought something. The TP-Link plugs are probably the only thing I bought, because up until that point I had Z-Wave and Zigbee devices everywhere, and the TP-Link plugs could integrate. They were so much cheaper, and so I went out and bought like a bunch of those just to use around in different things. And then whatever, recently that's turned out to be a bad idea since they've killed all the local API stuff. But I bought an Arrow router without checking the integrations, and then realized a week later, like your robot vacuum, that I was like, oh, I should have checked for a router that could integrate with Home Assistant. And then I was like, I should have bought the Ubiquity stuff, which this week turned out that was a good decision.
And it's a fair point. I think although you might not have bought something specifically because of the Home Assistant, I do find myself being put off by brands that aren't in Home Assistant. So maybe it's not about buying something because it's integrated, but you're deterred from items because of the lack of Home Assistant integration.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think you made the right decision on that Ubiquity issue. Right, a couple of news items then. So Home Assistant 4th release this year goes live tomorrow. And I'm looking at you two because you corrected me before the show started.
Yeah, like I said, it's like Christmas, isn't it?
Yeah. And I've just checked YouTube, and the placeholder's there for the Home Assistant release party, so it is there. So for listeners, if you don't already have that bookmarked, go onto YouTube and bookmark the Home Assistant release party. So 4 releases into April. Does it feel, and again, I don't know how long you guys have been in Home Assistant for, Jeff, if you've been over a year. I've been using Home Assistant for probably the past 3. I used to find with each release, I really had to feel I needed to know the detail because of the amount of breaking changes. I found with every release, I was scouring the release notes. I was checking, cross-checking, and then looking what I had installed. With now, I'm in a bit of a place where I'm not checking release notes, but I'm starting to get a bit overwhelmed with the amount of, not the speed of the releases, more to do with the amount of detail within the releases. But I don't know whether I need to be concerned because we're not in that place where stuff breaks with every release. I'm curious to know, Jeff, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, so I've been using Home Assistant probably since it would have been late 2013 or early 2014, so it's been a while.
Wow, okay.
And in the beginning, I would not even read the release notes. I was just, as soon as the update was out, I was updating, and then everything would break, and I'd spend the next day trying to fix it. I've gone a whole different direction now, in which like I don't even pay much attention to the releases anymore. I wait until I need to upgrade. GitHub will remind me because I got an integration that sends a issue to my GitHub repo that says time to upgrade, and I'll finally see that like 4 of them sitting in there going, oh, there's been 4 releases since I've updated last. I need to do that. But yeah, I haven't really been paying that close attention. It's more of like just waiting until I need something, because it has gotten super stable. It used to be that you needed every release to fix something that broke last release, but that hasn't been the case.
And I think that's probably why I was always, when it did come out, I was immediately scouring the release, checking for what I had integrated, checking for my devices, and I became quite obsessed with wanting to know what that release had. As I said, probably since the end of last year, the release comes, I install it, and I don't worry about it. But at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, is there a lot of stuff that's just been released which I need to know about? but I don't really feel I need to know about it because we're on more of a stable platform now.
Yeah, I've definitely gone to checking what integrations they add versus, deeper down into it, because they seem to be adding more than they are fixing now. So that's nice. Yeah.
Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, so I kind of started off a few years ago as well. And like Jeff said, whenever there was an update, I was like, yep, update now. And then I'd be like, oh no, everything's broken. And then you'd spend the whole time like sorting it all out. And then you'd sort it all out. And then it'd be like, oh, there's another one. And then I'd be like, I wouldn't learn my lesson. I'd be like, yep, update. And then, back to square one. But now I look forward to like the releases, and I do follow it like quite a lot, like seeing what Paulus and everyone else puts out on Twitter, all the new things that are sort of come in. And then the first thing that I usually do is I scroll down and see what's broken, and I'm like, yes, none of my stuff's broken. And then I'm like, what have I got? What have I got that's new? And I actually have multiple versions of Home Assistant sort of running on like demo units and things that I have for like my videos and just other tests and stuff that I do. And funnily enough, it's almost my sort of production one that I actually update first. So like
production.
So like my actual live one, my live.
I'm getting you on. There's so many people talk. They have two running, the development, production. For me, I'm just production. Risky as it is, I can't be bothered with the hassle of running development.
Oh yeah, so that's what I mean. Yeah, so like I do have test ones and like other environments where I should test the actual update first, even though like it is more stable now. But yeah, I just whack it on production straight away. So, but yeah, I'm that confident with my backups and stuff that it's not really an issue anymore.
And I'm probably that confident with the platform itself and with the releases they're doing. I don't feel, again, I could have gone back a couple of years and wanted to run development, but now would there be any point in to start a development up this late in the life of Home Assistant?
I think it personally sort of depends on like what you're doing with it, isn't it? Like for my one, I have the multiple versions, like one that I do like videos and things like that on, then other ones where I'm actually like playing around with code and actually like developing things. Like, I guess it's hence the development. But yeah, and then my production one is kind of the one where I have it just running all the time. And I try to like break the least before like the wife shouts or anything like that. So.
Yeah, I learned to listen a few times where I would give as much warnings and notices to listen, my good lady, tonight I'm going to be tinkering around with Home Assistant. Things might not work, and just keep my fingers crossed that everything would by the end of it.
Yeah, see, I used to be like, hey, I'm just going to do this one thing. It would like 5 minutes, just going to take it down, and it'd be longer. And she'd be like, yeah, no problem. And she actually used to say, I'm not bothered, or no problem. And she said it that many times. I was like, I may as well just stop telling you. You probably won't even notice. And then I did something, and then it was like, why didn't the lights work?
Jeff, do you run development and production?
I have a Raspberry Pi that's running. It's usually the same version that my main system's on, and it was meant to be just for, like Mark said, for recording videos, so they could be just a cleaner system than what I have. But it turns out that like all of the stuff that I want to talk about is on the production one, and it's just too much of a pain to move it. So most of the time I'm just in the production, the main one. I have like, there is definitely config in there that is just me throwing stuff in there to test. There's probably like 40 different like voice test things to test how messages play and stuff like that. So it's just easier to just keep with one.
Yeah, that's where my head's at.
Yeah, definitely is.
Next item, just moving on. And I don't know if you guys listen to the Home Assistant podcast.
Mm-hmm.
The recent one, when they had Paulus on it, it was something I was actually amazed by, that Paulus just kind of finished up the episode talking about the native TTS cloud. I couldn't believe it. I was like, the jaw hit the desk to thinking this is something that already exists and they're not screaming and shouting about it. And I think that was to Paulus's point. This is there. It's free. Obviously, I say free. It's included as part of that Nabocasa subscription, but it's not something that people talk about a lot that I'm aware of. Were you guys aware that it even existed?
Yeah, it's been there for a little while, hasn't it? Yeah. It's not something that I sort of that I use, but yeah, I know what you mean about it's one of those features that people don't shout about. But
so as I'm going to look calling you guys my techie guys tonight, because I'm certainly not when it comes to Home Assistant. I'd probably say I'm a bit of the average user. what would trump? So obviously you have Alexa TTS, Google TTS. Why would you want to use this cloud TTS as opposed to either one of those?
I'd probably say because it's like native, isn't it? It's like built into Home Assistant already, and it just works with everything. So like just out of the box, you can just make those calls to that TTS service without having to add anything extra. But yeah, it's not something that I've played around with really. Maybe a future video.
Yeah, I think I've played around with it some. It sounds better than the Google one, or
Yeah, it does.
the Echo one. I'm using Amazon Polly though, and it doesn't quite sound as good as Amazon Polly, but Amazon Polly costs after a while. And we're still using in this house Amazon Polly. I had tried to move to the new TTS one, but there's some. It's more the voice thing. The one I get out of Amazon Polly sounds as much like or as close to Jarvis as I can get, and the wife likes that, so we stick with that one. But it definitely sounds good. I don't know why. If you're doing TTS, I would just use the Nabukasa one, especially if you're Nabukasa.
Yeah,
Super
I mean,
easy.
and that's. I mean, I think Mark and we'd spoken previously. I had so much difficulty with the Alexa TTS, and now that I know this is already native, I'm thinking, why did I was banging my head off the wall at times with trying to get because of the two-factor authentication process. It was just an absolute faff. So I think the fact I'm now aware of this, thanks to Paulus in that last episode, I think I'm going to use this. And sadly, this kind of rubbishes your video, Mark, and your Alexa TTS guidance. So you should just take that one down and put another one up.
Yeah. I'm gonna do it straight after this. I'll just delete it and put a new one up.
I think the only problem is it depends on what speakers you have, because I don't think the Echoes. I don't think you can use the Nabukasa one on. Echoes. Can you?
I'm not sure. I feel like maybe.
Oh, don't tell me that! Don't tell me that.
Yeah, do you know? I feel like maybe that is true because I do have Echoes, and I'm sure there's a reason why I did this, or maybe it was because I started using the Echo ones before that the Nabukasa one was a thing. Yeah.
So I thought in Home Assistant you could display each of the Echoes as a media device.
Yeah, but I think it's how they produces, because it's actually producing like an MP3 on your Home Assistant and then playing that. And I don't think the Echoes can.
Yeah, the Google can, but the Echo can't. Yeah, I'm sure that's literally what it is.
Right.
I'll
don't delete it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't delete that video, Mark. I might go back to it.
I mean, because in my system, because I do in fact have Googles in some rooms and Echoes in other rooms, I have a whole bit of logic that says if it's going to be playing on a Google, use Amazon Polly, and if it's not, then just use the standard Echo TTS, because I can't play even Amazon Polly on the Echo. So there's like a whole, like it gets a total different voice when it's on an Echo in my house. And
in terms of the Polly prices, is that a tiered pricing structure or just a flat?
It's tiered. It's based on characters. It's like only $4 for 1 million characters. And literally my cost per month is 25 cents.
Right, okay.
So it's not a lot because I'm not generating all that much. I'm trying out the neural voices, which is $16 for 1 million characters, just to see it. They sound much better, but we'll see. We'll see after a while.
But even at $16, you'd be talking like $1 a month.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
that'd be cool. Making it more like Jarvis-like.
Yeah, I mean, I did. After listening to the Home Assistant episode, I did go to the Cloud TTS section, and there's an option you can just play. There's kind of a pre-installed little paragraph. I played it, and the difference in terms of the natural tone and the way it reads the text out was, I thought, fantastic compared to the standard ones.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Cool. Okay, acquisition of ESP Home. And again, I'm going to steal this from Home Assistant podcast because that was a really good, interesting topic. And it almost sounded like Nabukasa were out there gobbling up smaller tech.
Yeah, when I heard that one, I thought that was quite a strange one, because I was like, how does like an open source thing take on another open source thing? But yeah, Paulus explains it really well in that
really well
video.
And it's not something I've used yet. I've got it installed, and Jeff's shaking his head as well. So Jeff, I'm guessing you've not used ESP Home. Do you know? I love the thought of it, and I want to just buy loads of ESP32s, A266, and do loads of stuff with them. And I haven't, and I don't know why I haven't. Just
because it's work.
That's probably what it is.
Yeah, and I'm a slacker, so it's like I don't really want to do that.
Well, come on, Jeff, you can't even do more than one video a month. You don't start with ESP Home.
Right? Yeah. That's I went down this thing of like, man, it would be so much cheaper to build your own sensors and such using ESP Home or even just the Sonoff stuff. And I've done a couple of those, and I was like, man, this is way too much work. I'll just buy off the shelf. But now that Home Assistant is kind of controlling that development, it makes me more interested in doing that. I just don't have a 3D printer to build cases for sensors. Otherwise, I'd be turning those out, I think.
Yeah, see, so I've dabbled with the creating my own sensors and stuff because it is cheaper and it is fun just to play with that hardware. And that's where I kind of stopped, because you make these things and you're like, oh, that's like an ugly looking thing. Like you got to hide that on the shelf or down the back of the sofa or something, wherever you're putting them. And then hopefully when I move, that's going to be like my first big sort of purchase. Will be like a 3D printer, and then I'll probably like get massively into the whole ESP, just because I'll have like the printer and to make pretty things.
I do wish that I think I missed a boat with Mr. Trick this year with Christmas and never put a 3D printer on it. It's something that I think we all want. Whether or not I would ever use it, I'd probably print silly little bits and bobs, but it's the thought, if you could build the wall with a 3D printer, the endless possibilities once I have this 3D printer. Yeah, unlikely. But I'm like yourself, Mark. I think I ran through all the possibilities, like all the different sensors and whatnot, what you can do with it with the ESP Home, and I would love just to spend a solid week, take a week off from work, and just invest all that time in just tinkering. And I think if I was to really invest in buy loads of sensors and ESP32s, etc., they would just be another project I'm waiting to get to.
Yeah.
And there's a whole host of other projects which I think would trump that. So it's a nice to have.
Yeah, it's that all important time, isn't it? Finding the time to actually get to it and to sit down and do it.
But I mean, that's a fair point. I mean, Mark, if you were to pick to kind of go into it, what would you go for?
I really like the multi sensors. So where there's some like really like cool looking ones, especially when you have a look on Thingiverse. That's where I've sort of been going, because you go on like Thingiverse and then you'll find like a cool looking case or something, and then usually people also link to their actual ESP project. So you'll have like a motion sensor with a thermometer and all these other things, and it's all in like one like cool looking like case or something like that. But that's what I'd go for, I think, like a multi-sensor, because you could just make like a one-off sensor, like a motion sensor or temperature sensor or whatever it is. But yeah, I really like those multi-sensors. So
Jeff, anything you would buy that you would build that you currently can't buy?
I mean, I think mine would be the same as Mark. It'd be just building sensors, because to me, to get to that smart home, my home needs more context of what's going on. So it's just building sensors to stick everywhere, so kind of get a better sense of what's happening. Better presence in the room seems to be the biggest thing for me, is trying to figure out where people are in the house. And I bought a whole bunch of those Aquara motion sensors, and they're great. You can get them for like $4 off of Alibaba, I think. But they seem to every 3 or 4 days they lose connectivity with my Zigbee router, and I have to go and repair them. So I don't know what's going on with that. So I would probably just go around and replace those, build a whole bunch of multi sensors for just, light level, motion, temperature, stuff like that. Just stick them everywhere.
Yeah, see, I've got loads of those little Akara sensors as well, but for me, they're actually quite stable. So I've got a few different motion sensors, and the other one that I have is I've got some Sonoff ones, and I've got some Hue ones, and just random other ones. I actually find the Akara ones to be the sort of better of the bunch, really.
I'm waiting a few of them arriving from AliExpress. I think, Jeff, they were like £6, something like that, so $8.
Yeah, they're pretty.
Yeah, ordered them back in February, so hopefully they'll be here by summer next year. Wait and see the way AliExpress is.
Yeah, that's the only problem there. Yep.
On Jeff, just because you mentioned it, the presence detection, is it purely kind of PIR sensors you've got for that? And feasibly, what would be, without people carrying around their phone in every single room to know where they are, how would you see that working?
Well, right now, it's the system I've got is pretty complex. It's basically looking at the few motion sensors I have. It's looking at, with that Amazon Media Player, I don't want to say her name, integration in Hacks, you get access to tell which device was last called. So if you're in a room with an Echo, I can look and see what time was the device called. So I know at least then somebody's in that room if I don't have a motion sensor in there. So it is like a whole tiered logic system of looking at motion sensors when speakers are playing or been triggered, whether devices like TVs are on. That's pretty much how I'm doing it now. It's crazy.
It's quite impressive. I hadn't even thought of that.
Wow.
But it's purely there is somebody in a room as opposed to this person.
Yep. I got excited because a whole bunch of people have been like, Lewis did a video on dudes and object detection, and I've got some Wise cameras in the house that are looking at doors that kind of see some of the rooms, and I was like, maybe I could do person detection, but it doesn't happen fast enough for me to know if somebody's just walking through or somebody's hanging out. But I got excited because I thought maybe I could start using some cameras kind of, without telling anybody, hey, this camera's watching the people in this room. Because some people might get upset about that in the house. But
I did love the video Dr. Z's did with the camera above the sink. I think he worked with Lewis to try and identify whether the sink had dishes in it and how the camera could detect between different objects as to what was a dish and what wasn't a dish. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I played around a little bit with that object detection. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Mark, presence detection, apart from, again, are you mainly these Aquara sensors?
No, so I'm actually using a mix like Jeff is, except I'm also using Room Assistant. So that one I'm using Bluetooth Classic, and then I've got like a few certain tag devices, mainly the Apple Watches, because that's something that you pretty much always have on. And then that way, if you haven't got your watch on or your phone or any other track device, I then like sort of use the sensors as data as well. So again, I also use that the last called Amazon Echo. So I use the Echoes, I use motion sensors and the actual Bluetooth device. And then I combine all those to say whether a room's occupied. And then I can go drill down further and I can actually look to see specifically who's in that room based on the Bluetooth.
That's good.
Yeah, that's on my to-do list, Room Assistant. I watched Mark's video and I was like, I need to do this. And I wrote a note and I haven't got back to it.
Yeah, it's quite cool, Room Assistant. But back to the sort of ESP, I would like to give the ESP, I can't actually remember the name of it. There's like an ESP sort of presence detection one. Maybe it is just called ESP presence. No.
If it's not, that's what it's called now.
That's what it is now. Yeah, I've rebranded it. Yeah, there's an ESP one which I would also like to try, because that way I think you could just build your own. Because I'm using Raspberry Pi 0Ws at the minute, so obviously you need one of those for each kind of room that you want to, or zone you want to kind of track. But it works well, and when you combine it with other sensors, yeah, it works.
I've just done a quick Google, and what's coming up with that is purely ESP using Bluetooth low energy.
Yeah, it might just. I know that there's there is an ESP way of doing it, but that'd be one that I'd want to try. ESP presence.
Quickly go and copyright that.
Yeah, I'm going to build it.
Jeff, so something we'd spoken about previously around what constitutes a smart home, because I think that there'll be a big spectrum as to what we would define as a smart home and what the average consumer might define as a smart home. So Joe Bloggs buys a Philips Hue bulb, he buys a flick button, and he can now turn his Philips Hue bulb on by a flick button. They would define that as smart. I wouldn't. So, Jeff, I'm curious, and I'm going to play kind of the devil's advocate here. What would you constitute as a genuine smart home, but something that is not way out there and requires hours and hours and hours and hours of days of work that is achievable?
Yeah, you just killed the whole idea of a smart home, I think.
Okay, well, feel free start at the extreme then and work your way back.
Yeah, because I don't think we're at that point where it's achievable yet. But this is one of those things that drives me nuts, and I try not to get screaming at people on YouTube. But to me, smart home would just run itself. There would be no interaction. I wouldn't need to interact with anything. Wouldn't need to flip switches. I would just come into a room and the house would be smart enough to know, hey, somebody's in this room, and maybe, it's dark and they need lights on because maybe they're going to be reading or whatever. And the house would just know that. And, you walk into a room and it would just provide you updates with information if you needed it verbally or whatnot. And just be able to tell. Of course, it takes a ton of sensors, I think. And at this point, a ton of just programming logic, because there's no way for the house to learn that on its own yet. So hopefully we're not too far from that, but I don't think you can get there without hours and hours of programming yet.
Okay.
I think Home Assistant gives you a good start at doing that, because at least it gives you an open platform to do that. But yeah.
So is it purely the physical interaction still not smart?
Yeah, I consider that more like home automation, and that's probably just, splitting hairs with people that want to talk about smart home versus home automation. But to me, that's just automation.
Okay.
If I'm replacing a physical switch with just, automation, if I'm walking into a room and flipping one switch instead of having to go to 3 different lamps, it turns all 3 lamps on. To me, that's just automation. There's no real smarts to that.
But at what point do you build so many automations into that one click? Does that become smart? So that one click turns on lights, it then triggers another event, it then senses that something's happened, and you have a big cascade of different automations. Is that smart?
I don't know that I would consider all that smart. Just a bunch of automations. It's like, I don't even think we have true AI these days. I think it's just somebody's programmed a whole bunch of decision logic and they called it an AI. And I think that's really where we're at with smart homes at this point. It's just we're programming the intelligence. So,
Mark, do you want to disagree with him?
I reckon if you turn 2 light bulbs on, that's pretty smart. No,
efficient.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there is a difference between like home automation and it being a smart home, but I think I would class it as a smart home if it has that ability to react and do things by itself. And when I say react, I mean like the house is aware of certain things have happened within the house. So like your presence detection, that would probably be like a main one really. But yeah, if the house is aware that things have happened and then the house does things then like based on those events. So like when you have like, I saw a cool one, I can't remember the guy's name, but he had these cool, again, automations, but they do add to the smart home, where there was certain light coming through windows, and if they hit these like light detectors, the house would know then like I should turn the heating off in this room, because that sunlight on that side of the house heats up this room, but it will only do certain things if people are in that room, and then it would know then based on like Google calendars like who's actually home on that day and just things like that. So it is a bunch of automations, but the house is kind of thinking, but yes, they are programmed. So yeah, there is that fine hair splitting thing of, is it an automation? Is it smart? But
yeah, I'm closer to you, Mark, than I think I'm with you, Jeff. So Jeff, I 100% agree that pushing a button to turn a couple of lights on is efficient and it's clever and it sells devices. Is it smart? Probably not. I think where my head's at the moment with what a smart home is the information it can give me back, which informs my life as to how I make better decisions. So whether that's energy consumption, whether that's how long windows and doors have been opened at the same time the heating's been on or the HVAC, whatever that may be, for me is the house giving me data to then change our day-to-day habits. That to me is where I feel personally, and again, I think this is maybe it's clearly personal, where to me a smart home is that it's informing me. I do something and it feeds back, yep, Lee, this is what you've done, and as a result of doing this, here's all the data.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the presence detection is like the example Mark was, to me, closer to a smart home, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that you have all of that data, so that the house is smart enough to know people are home, so it can do different things. I've got my security system. People integrate their security systems with Home Assistant, and they basically replicate the alarm panel that is on their wall by their door, and they put it in a dashboard in Home Assistant. And I'm like, why? So Home Assistant's smart enough to know if you're home. It could just disarm it based on whether or not you're home, and then if you're not home, don't disarm the alarm type thing. That's kind of how I built mine. I didn't want it to just move the alarm panel from the wall to the dashboard in Home Assistant.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think that's what to me was my most pleasing. I called it an automation, whether it's a genuine smart home enough, but our automation was, if one of us left, the other one was at home, the alarm would trigger. The minute two of us went out that kind of geo zone, the alarm would go on, it would arm, and when one of us came back, the alarm would disarm. We didn't need to, you almost forgot you had an alarm because it was just triggering naturally. That to me was the ideal scenario. For me, I would struggle to, without having all those tiered systems of presence detection in different rooms, using Bluetooth, using your ESP presence detection, Mark, whatever it may be, how ESP we get yeah, there you go, ESP presence, or is it just ESP presence?
Yes, presence. Yeah. Copyright.
Copyright. But are we miles away from that right now? And do we just enjoy what we've got because right now it's pretty darn cool?
I think it's the cool factor, isn't it? But also it's the cool factor, and then also it depends on like what kind of like level you are, isn't it? So if you are just the average Joe Blogs, like, that button turning on those two lights, that's cool. But then, if you're leaving the house and all these things are going to trigger, like, your alarms are going to come on, your robot's going to clean, the robot hand's going to like make your dinner, then yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. It's like putting those switches in Home Assistant doesn't really do anything for me. I saw those people get excited about the flick button, and I'm like, you literally just you just replace the switch with another switch. Okay, it's a more advanced switch. You can hold it down and it does something different, but you just replaced it with a switch. So you could just put 4 switches there and do the same thing.
So I made that exact. So I did it a while ago now. My wife was killing herself laughing. So top of her stairs is kind of a double gang. One switch does the top of the stairs, the second gang does the bottom of the stairs, and I put a Xiaomi button next to that switch to do that exact same thing. And my justification was, yeah, but if we leave it on and we leave the house, I can turn it off with my phone, which to me made perfect sense. I totally over-engineered a very simple problem, but she was very much, but you've just replaced the switch with a round switch. And it just, yeah, do you know what? Maybe we just need to stop just adding smart stuff for the sake of being smart stuff.
See, I did the same thing with the button, except mine was like lower down on the wall, and it was so like my daughter could reach the switch.
See, that's probably smart.
That's smart, yeah.
So you've missed out there because yours is not smart, but if you have it down a few inches, it's the height. That's what classifies it.
That's right. It's all about placement of the switch.
And if you do it even lower, you can get your dog or your cat to push it with their nose, and there you go.
Yep.
Good. And
it's all about usability.
There you go. Brilliant. Before we move on to my favorite segment, which is the mystery question, I love doing this just to try and tell you guys nuts. Jeff, what have you got going on at the moment? What's upcoming? What have you got on the horizon that you really want to just give a shout out?
I've been working on one video for a month now, so we're getting closer. We're getting closer to that. I've got a Reolink video I'm working on. I've got a whole bunch of stuff. I bought a whole bunch of AccuRite weather sensors I wanted to try to get integrated into Home Assistant. They're sitting on the shelf. And then I think it's just some more. I was trying to figure out, I was going to do a video on Amazon Poly, and that seems to be a huge, every time I sit down to write a script for that, I'm like, how am I going to do this video? It's super complicated how I've basically engineered my solution. So I don't know how to break that down yet. Struggling with that one. But definitely want to get more into the TTS stuff, because this house is constantly talking. And I think that's probably the coolest factor that I've got going on, is that, just certain times it just spits out information to keep you informed about what's going on, whether it's like what's on the calendar, what the weather's doing, just different things. So,
and that's where mine's drastically lacking on. So I'll definitely take some inspiration from you though. So can I pin you down for a date for that next video?
It'd probably be April sometime. That's the goal. I mean, I was gonna do that today before jumping on this, and then ended up on the PlayStation for a while. So you could see the motivation
fits the name.
Right.
Mark, what about yourself? What's upcoming? What have you just released? What do you want the people to know about?
Yeah, so upcoming, I've got some more echo things. I do have some more presence detection stuff, so I kind of have made that into like a little kind of series. There's a few automations that haven't got working perfectly, which are kind of delaying those videos. I've also got like a bunch of hardware, so some devices and things that I was gonna kind of have a go at doing some reviews and stuff like that, because at the minute I've kind of just got Home Assistant stuff on my channel, but I do want it to be like tech and other bits of software on there too. So I'm going to try and squeeze those things in and see, if people are interested in that. So,
and is that a change you're hoping to make soon, or is that a couple of months away? What are we talking?
Whenever that all important time allows it, really. Yeah, like Jeff, I've got some videos that I've started. I've also got a Reolink as one as well. But it's sort of, if you start it and then you go off and do other things, like when you come back, you've got to get into that mindset, and it's always off-putting. So yeah, you probably would just want to jump on the PlayStation.
I heard the goal was 3 a week, so
yeah.
There'll be at least 9 Mark videos before my next one comes out, probably. So.
Yeah, 3 a week.
I mean, that on that, Mark, because I mean, you have kind of fired out some quite rapid succession. Are you going to maintain that pace? Is it maintainable, or have you got to the point now where you've got a nice pace of sticking them out? Or is the wife going to say, Mark, you need to come to bed, stop these 2 a.m. efforts?
Yeah. No, I would definitely kind of slow it down. But again, like last week, I put 2 out, but they were both on the same day and they were both on the same thing. So I might carry on with that, where if I create something and while I'm creating it, I'm like, I could give some extra information here, but it's kind of off topic. I might just record that at the same time like I did last week and put them out. But yeah, I think 3 a week was very optimistic.
Well, you certainly set your.
I gave it a
you set it high.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, because I don't know. Whenever I sit there and think about it, I'm like, I know exactly how this is going to work. But then when you actually go to record it, like I said, it never comes out how you thought, and then there's all the editing, and then all the disruptions between doing all that stuff. So yeah, maybe just 1 a week, and I'll try and get it less janky than it is.
Yeah, I sat down to do my script for the Amazon Poly, and I ended up rewriting my entire voice notification system. So,
yeah, I'm often looking at something on my Home Assistant, and then something will happen, and then I'll go off on a Reddit tangent or something else, or it's the focus that you need.
Yeah, but Jeff, I'm really intrigued about the Amazon Poly one. So if you can have it finished by the end of the week, it'd be really appreciated.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Right, on to mystery questions. Jeff, we'll start with yourself. You have 20 seconds, and I'm going to set my timer right now. 20 seconds to justify to myself and Mark why SlackerLabs should be renamed SlackerCrabs. Go.
Oh man, that was not what I was expecting. Okay, so because crabs just sit around and do nothing too. So I mean that makes it super easy just to rename that, and they probably need some home automation as well, right? So they're probably lacking in the voice notification stuff. They're down there just drowning in the water.
Well done. I'll save you from your misery. Your 20 seconds over.
Can I just ask, are they smart crabs or are they just automation crabs?
That's right. Are they Wi-Fi crabs?
Wi-Fi crabs.
God, the day Wi-Fi crabs meet Wi-Fi guinea pigs, we're in trouble.
That's right.
Mark, so I want you to describe your podcast, your YouTube channel in 15 words. Okay?
15.
15 words. So just let that sink in. Think of 15 words. But as your surname is Watt, after each word you need to say what. Okay? And you've got 30.
Yeah.
You've got 30 seconds to 15 words to describe the YouTube channel. But if after every word I need to hear what. Okay.
Yeah. Do I say this? Do I say it like monotone? Like, do you just what? Or is it like a different
Oh no,
what?
it's what question mark. Yeah, what I want a what question mark after every word. Okay. On your marks, get set, go.
Interesting. What? Janky. What? Cool. What? Home assistant. What? Interesting. What? I think I already said that. What? No Wi-Fi crabs. What? Guinea pigs. What? Episode 3. What? 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 What?
Do you know? I'll stop you there. I'm not even counting how many words you've said. I'm just listening for the whats.
Yeah, I felt like I was going to like a bit of a rap then. ESP, what?
I'm going to have to go with Jeff as the winner for that one purely because I think you were cheating, Mark. I think I heard 3 words and then what, and I wasn't.
You just kept saying what.
Just what? Yeah, I wasn't convinced you were actually confused and you were asking what the what was. So yeah, Jeff wins with the slacker crabs.
I feel cheated. What?
What, Mark? Before we wrap up, gents, I've had a great time chatting away with you. Anything else you want to just give a shout out to before we call it quits? Jeff's stunned by the slacker crabs. He just can't comprehend it.
I'm still trying to figure out how I'm gonna work that name change in. I guess we got a release tomorrow, so everybody go download a new Home Assistant, see what they added.
Looking forward to it. Mark, anything?
What? I'm still stunned.
Perfect, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for your time.
Awesome.
Yep.
Cheers.
Nice one. Catch you in a bit.
Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that you can be notified when the newest conversation comes out. And if you've got any suggestions for guests that you want me to interview, please feel free to find me on Twitter at the SH Collective.